Oh, man. Whew. I just love worshiping God in my car. Like, I love the journey with God. I love just driving and spending time with the Father. And I'm getting ready to jump on I-95 heading up through Florida, driving back to Pennsylvania today, doing a straight drive straight through, about 17, 18-hour drive. And you know, God is amazing, and I just love worshiping. I love spending time in the car with Him. And I just want to take you on this journey that God has taken me on. A lot of times we don't know how to step out when God calls us to step out. And I pray that this encourages you to step out into what God is calling you to step out into. You know, sometimes if we don't see it in front of us, we don't know what it looks like. And, you know, I know people hear my words. They hear me say that, you know, God called me away from my job, and God called me away from where I was living, and God called me into full-time ministry. You know, but I don't think they realize what I've had to give up. You know, there's a cost to everything. There's a cost to all that we do. And it's not always on the forefront. It's not always on the surface, and you don't always see it. So when you don't see it in the physical, you know, it's like, well, how bad can it be? You know, and there's times that there's jealousy in people that, you know, and there's frustration because they want to do the same thing, and you know, for whatever reason, you know, there's no condemnation, you know. And my heart is, you know, what is God calling for you to do? What is the vision for you, for God's heart in your life? Where's the passion to persevere through it? You know, what are your dreams? And I believe that we're all called to dream. You know, God gave us the ability to imagine. He created us in His own image. You know, and if we were created in His own image, there is so much inside of us that we've never tapped into. You know, and so, you know, back in 2012, I had been out of school for about a year, about 6 months, and I graduated from Global that past May, and I'm working full-time and not sure what full-time ministry looked like. I knew that God turned my life around when I was 38, when He pulled my car off an embankment as I was committing suicide, and my life had never been the same. And, you know, there was no going back to the IT world. There was no going back to regular routine life. Like, my life was not the same. That person that I knew prior to that encounter with God, I wasn't the same person. And I couldn't even comprehend how to do the IT job anymore. Like, it was a thing of my past. And, you know, I'd rather just throw my computer on the highway than to even fix it when there's a virus. Like, I just like I want to just like, I can't deal with it. And that's about, like, you know, so you don't want someone like that in the IT field. No. And I feel like I've lost my knowledge. And, you know, a lot of it is when your passion has shifted. And my passion shifted into learning so much about God, and I can't get enough, and there's such a hunger inside of me that I just keep diving into the Word, and I keep diving into, you know, worship, and I just keep diving into what does God have for my life. You know, I really believe that was a Damascus Road experience in my life, and the same old same wasn't going to be good enough anymore. And I wasn't meant to be the same old same. I wasn't meant, my life itself, I'm not talking about your life, I'm talking about my life, was not meant to be normal anymore. And my new normal was totally different. And in that, I had to learn how to walk this out. And so all I knew is just to keep praying, just to keep asking God, what does this look like? How do I do this? You know, I had no idea what it looked like. And so as I'm laying on the floor during a conference, And I had gotten taken out in the spirit, and God was talking to me, and I had an encounter, and in that encounter my life radically changed. And in that encounter I heard these words, and he said, I want you to get rid of everything. And I am just a mess. I'm just a bawling mess. And I come to, and I'm like, whew, what part of everything is everything? What does that look like? You know, my mom had just passed away four months earlier. You know, and I had a full-time job. I was, you know, working at a distribution center. I was enjoying my job. I was able to give to missions. I was able to go on mission trips. I was able to just do life and minister out of that. You know, minister into the distribution centers. You know, for a while I had 2 jobs at one time, and you know, learning what it looked like. You know, it's not about ministering to everybody and anybody. It's about watching where the Father is and knowing where the Father was and ministering to that person that He highlights. And it wasn't about pushing the gospel on someone. Sometimes it's just loving them where they were, lifting them up, encouraging them. And in that, they saw the love of the Father. They saw the love of Jesus. They knew that you were different. And some liked you, some didn't, you know, and it's okay. So I'm sitting there on the flooring, and I'm just trying to comprehend like what I just heard, and I'm like, what part of everything is everything? You know, what part of it is everything? You know, and I got up off the floor eventually, and I went over to some friends, and you know, my friend looks at me and she said, I don't know what you just encountered. There's a banner over your head, white with black letters, and it says Crucial. And I was a pudding pop in her arms. I collapsed in her arms, and I was undone. Because I knew that God was serious. See, everything that God calls us to do, there is a cost. You know, and the ultimate cost is, are we willing to give up the worldly things for God? Doesn't mean we give up everything. It's what He asks us to give up. You know, what in our life is we put before God? You know, and I don't know all the answers. I just know what He did for me, and this is not for everyone. You know, God will show you, and He will give you an understanding without reason. He will give you an understanding without doubt, and you will know what you're called to do. You keep persevering, you keep asking Him, and you keep spending time with the Father, and you will know how to walk out what you're called. You know, He told Gideon to go in his own strength. You know, and my friend that day said these words. She said, you do not feel worthy for the call on your life. And I have struggled with rejection, insecurity, unworthiness, and I believed a lie that I was unloved. That was my root lie. You know, and I just got delivered a year ago of a destroyer spirit and a Leah spirit, amongst some other things, and you know, and through all of it I found the root lie that I've been believing, that I was unloved. You know, and the Holy Spirit took me back to an encounter of when I was a baby. I had a loving family. You know, they loved to the degree they knew how to love. You know, my father loved in his way, and his way was to provide. And we never went without. We didn't have much, but we never went without. We had the necessities of life. So how do you walk that out? You know? What does that look like in your life? What is God calling you to do? So, as I pressed into God and spent time with the Father, you know, and I didn't get it right all the time. You know, and I heard God say He wanted me to tell my landlord, which was my brother, that I was giving up my lease to the house that I had been renting at the end of June. Well, I didn't like confrontation, and I struggled with that, you know, because I don't like people being mad at me. I don't like people that are upset with me. I don't want to be rejected, and you know, I felt bad enough, and I didn't need anybody else to make me feel any worse, you know, and not everybody understands what you're walking through, you know. And so 2 days before, God told me to tell him before I left for Brazil that year. I was heading on a mission trip to Brazil, and so a friend of mine 2 days before I leave for Brazil said, "Hey, did you talk to your brother yet?" And I'm like, "Yeah, no, not yet." So I did. I called him and I told him. You know, I'm the youngest of 7. We lost a sister when I was 30, and when she was 31, I was 15 years old, and our world got rocked. We had a happy-go-lucky family. We lived life through hard times, but we loved. We knew what love was, and in the midst of our life, all of a sudden, our family gets ripped apart through a drunk driving accident when my sister is a passenger and she's thrown out of the car. And she's killed instantly. You know, my one brother, he said, "I don't want to lose you too." You know, people love. And sometimes fear controls our love. And there was a stripping away. And it was hard. You know, and I walked it out. You know, and I had God tell me at the end of May, He said, I want you to give a 5-week notice to your boss and tell him you're leaving at the end of June. And I didn't know where I was going. Like, I wasn't going to have a place to live. And I wasn't called to ask anyone to live with them. Like, I didn't know what it looked like. I didn't want to be a charity case. You know, and what does missions look like in America? It is hard. I'm telling you, it sucks at times. I'll be real with you. You can find more money to go on a mission trip internationally than you can find to do missions work in America. And that is sad, because I don't believe our country realizes the need of our own people, the need for missionaries in America. You know, and they feel like you should work full time to support yourself and do ministry on the side. They don't take it at face value. And so that makes it hard. It really makes it hard. And so in the midst of this, I give my boss a notice, and they're like, "Well, you don't have to give us that much of a notice." And I said, "Well, this is when I need to leave." And they still didn't have someone to take my place at the end of that 5 weeks, which was like not a surprise, I guess. And so, you know, it was up until a week before I left my job, before I had a place to stay. And God opened up a door for me to move 3 hours away. And I moved in with some friends of mine, their grandfather wasn't doing real well, and he needed someone to look after him at times. Not to always be there, but just, someone that would be coming and going, and just to check on him every now and then. And I went there, and I was even in an area that really wasn't cost effective to go get even a part-time job. It would have cost me more money in gas than it would have to not work. And I didn't know how to walk it out. I didn't. But I did what I knew. I had friends who said, hey, God wouldn't take you out of a job without giving you another one. I had people quote scriptures to me that, God helps those who help themselves. And, Paul worked, as a tent maker. And it's like, I don't know how to walk this out. I'm just doing what I think I know what God is saying. I wasn't beyond working. And every time I would cry myself to sleep, like, God, how do I do this? Like, God, if I'm supposed to get a job, show me. Show me. I'm going with what I heard last, and that was to give a 5-week notice and to walk away from my job, to walk away from what I knew. Really walked away from my family and all my friends and moved 3 hours away. I had some friends there, but I really didn't know anybody but 3 or 4 people. And God took me to a place where I could spend more time with Him. More time to heal. Opportunities to do ministry. And time to start building character. To walk out the dream in my life. And there's a long process. And I'll continue that with session 2.